Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. The USC Family Caregiver Support Center is pleased to provide this educational video for families and relatives who take care of one or more loved ones. This virtual event is part of our 6-week caregiver discussion series that explores how cultural backgrounds shape us as caregivers. Today's discussion will be around the family caregiving experience through the eyes of Black African American men. I'm Allison Corey, and I will be your host for today's program. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce you to the center. The USC Family Caregiver Support Center serves and supports family caregivers as they navigate through their caregiving journey. The center provides services such as information and referral, support groups, evidence-based trainings, community education, and much more to family caregivers seeking help. Our center is also home to the Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center, which is part of the California statewide system of 11 caregiver resource centers. This month, we've invited many families from diverse backgrounds to share how their cultural heritage has shaped their caregiving experience. We're at the end of October, so this is actually our last event. We invite you to interact with us and our staff in the chat feature. It's a great way to talk to other caregivers who may be tuning in and watching the event at the same time. Please note that you must be logged into your YouTube account to submit your comments. Now, let's get the show going. We've invited 3 family caregivers here today to give us insight into the Black African American male family caregiver experience. This discussion will allow caregivers in this demographic to relate to and learn about others' triumphs and struggles when providing care for a loved one. They will provide some insight into their personal experiences on how cultural beliefs or viewpoints shape their caregiving decisions and color their perspectives. Being a Black African American male creates a unique cultural experience that are specific to the community. Gary D. Brown, formerly the Assistant Director of the USC Black Alumni Association, will be our moderator for today's panel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. My name is Gary D. Brown, and I am the Assistant Director of the USC Black Alumni Association. I am also a supporter and a client of the USC Family Caregiver Support Network. Welcome to our discussion today on being a Black male caregiver. I myself was a caregiver for my mother, and that was how I was introduced to this wonderful program. Today, we'll have a panel that will examine the situation and some of the challenges of being a Black male caregiver presents. So now let's meet our panel. First, we have Bill Preston.
Good morning, Gary.
Hello, Bill. We have Sean Alexander.
Morning.
And we also have Leon Watts.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, gentlemen, if you could tell us just a little bit about yourself. Leon, we can start with you.
All right. I actually started caregiving or working with my parents and grandparents years ago, and currently I take care of a lady that's 95. She's actually in assisted living, and but I monitor everything. I've known her for many years, and she asked me to take care of her for the rest of her life. So that's what I'm doing. I graduated from SC with my master's in gerontology in 2017. So I actually work with LACRC and the School of Gerontology on a regular basis.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Sean.
Yes. Hi, my name is Sean Alexander. I take care of my 86-year-old mother at night. We have a full-time caregiver during the day, 5 days a week. I'm a retired policeman for almost 35, 40 years. And so my retirement dovetailed into taking care of her, which was convenient because COVID hit. So I was really relieved that I didn't have to go to work anymore because I would have definitely brought something home. I live with my mom. I take care of her at night, and that's the situation right now. It's just
Great.
going on.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. And last but not least, we have Bill.
Thank you, Gary. My name is Bill Preston. I began my journey to caregiving with my uncle, Charles Preston. He's also my godfather. He really stepped up after my father died, providing me a lot of guidance. My journey began with my uncle Charles basically in 1998, and he's a World War II veteran. And then I also had to start my journey to caregiving with my mother back in 2006 after she was hospitalized after a stroke. So it's been a long journey, but my mother was also a World War II veteran in the Navy, and my uncle was in the Army, and I had to give up my corporate career and adapt to starting my own company, Roots Worldwide LLC, in order to be an effective caregiver, but also to generate an income and to adjust my schedule in accordance with what their needs were. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, gentlemen, I know we've all kind of had similar experiences, and I know they sent some questions, and we'd like to just hear your views on how being a Black male caregiver has affected you and affected your surroundings. So my first question to you, we heard a little bit about who you're working with, but when did you get that aha moment to look into say, I'm just no longer someone that is here and helping out, but now I am officially a caregiver for this person? Leon, if you'd like to start.
Uh, that's a great question because I had been taking care of or helping to take care of my grandparents and my parents for many years and didn't really consider myself, a caregiver until Marilyn asked me to take care of her. And I started interacting with people with, like assistant, caregivers to come in to help with her care and everything. I just felt that, like I was just doing the paperwork and taking her for doctor appointments. And then when someone called me the caregiver, that's when it hit me.
Mhm. Cool. Bill, what was your experience in coming to the grips that, hey, I'm now being a caregiver?
Gary, it's a great question. And, actually, there were two moments. It was pretty much an initial aha with my uncle when his diagnosis of Alzheimer's was confirmed in 2008. Uh, the young lady who was at the VA basically pulled me to the side and said that your uncle now shows the mild cognitive impairment stages. And I recommend that she gave me a book called The 36-Hour Day, which I never did read, not knowing what I was in store for, but making sure he had the appropriate housing and needs he was going to have. And then with my mother, then with my Uncle Charles, the real aha moment came was when I brought him home from a long day at the VA in 2013. And we went to San Dimas retirement home where I put him in to make the transition where he might need to go into a facility that provides Alzheimer's care. It would have been a direct link. And we came home and he said, I asked him, Uncle Charles, we're here. And he said, well, are we at your house? And I said, no, we're here. So I got the nurse to come on out and she took him inside. And then shortly after that, I went back in, make sure he had his supper. And he said, who are you? And I said, Uncle Charles, I'm your nephew, Bill. And he said, get the hell out of here. You're not my family. You're an imposter. And I'm like, whoa, we just had a full day together. So then I had to turn around and I went to a dear friend, Elaine Steele, who caregived for Rosa Parks, a very dear friend of mine. And Rosa Parks was the ultimate caregiver. And Elaine took care of her for many years. And she also suffered from dementia. And Elaine, after I broke down, said, Bill, you can't take it personal. She said, they're not going to remember. He's not going to remember what he said to you 2 minutes ago, let alone 5 minutes ago. So you got to have thicker skin. Don't take it personal. And then that's when I pretty much made that transition with him. But the blessing behind that and my faith in God, it opened my eyes before my siblings when it came to my mother's diagnosis with Alzheimer's in 2018. It was easy to pivot because I saw those signs with the agitation, the confusion, somebody stealing their things of that nature. So my uncle's preparation and Miss Steele, Elaine Steele, with the Rosa Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development in Detroit, she really prepared me because she took care of Mrs. Parks for many years. And Mrs. Parks was the ultimate caregiver, not only of her mother, but her husband Raymond and numerous other people. So I was blessed to have that guidance from Elaine Steele.
Okay. All right. Yeah, everybody has their story of how they, came to be. Sean, share your story of how you got that moment?
Wow, that's that's quite a lot. My thanks, Gary. My mother, uh, about 8 months ago, fell off the bed when I was at the dentist, and the day caregiver couldn't find her, so we had to call the fire department paramedics, and we found her on the edge of the bed, and she was hospitalized for 6 days. She was okay, but she was definitely altered. Um, she was hospitalized for 6 days, and she came back, and my aha moment was, well, this is what it's going to be. I'm going to have to take care of her at night, and it's been very, to put it bluntly, it's been very difficult.
Yeah.
She wanders at night, and she wandered this morning. But I realized that, well, if she can't um, do that just like she did when you were a child with a scissor in a hospital
Mhm.
home. But that was not feasible, although I definitely looked into it. Um, it was just too much money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and it was just very, very hard. Some days are good, some days are bad, some days she'll remember things, some days she won't. And, the last comment that Bill made, you can't really take it personally. You
Yeah.
got to watch what you say too.
Yeah. Definitely.
Uh,
Definitely.
yeah, so
So is this your first experience with caregiving?
yes,
Okay. So no, you mentioned that
yes.
this was your mother, so you've been doing it for less than a year now.
I've been doing it for, no, I've been doing it uh, it wasn't just severe about a year ago or 2 years ago. It
Hmm.
got really severe when she fell off the bed.
Okay. Wow.
I think that was, God, I can't remember. That was about 6 months ago. So now it's 24/7,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
which is tough
Yeah.
because you definitely don't have a life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Luckily, for myself, I was in a position where I did have my brother who actually lived next door to my mother, and that he could come and provide care. And then she was actually financial able to have nurses throughout the day as well. So she was blessed in that sense. My question to you, gentlemen, then is why or how did you choose, Sean, you kind of touched upon this, but how did you choose to make the decision to take on the role as a caregiver? Did you explore other options such as, day nurses, assisted living, things of that nature? How did you come into the role? Leon, we can start with you.
Um, what was really good for me was that Maryland got long-term care insurance back in the 80s.
Mhm.
I've known Maryland for about 30 years, so um, and believe it or not, she decided I was going to take care of her before she even asked me. A number of people told me that I was going to be the person that was going to take care of her, and I think that because we knew each other so long, she knew how I took care of my grandparents and my parents and everything. She felt I'd be a good candidate. Um, and so the fact that she had long-term care insurance was helpful. But to be honest, I started actively taking care of her. She lived in Palm Desert area, and I'm here in LA. So for 6 years, I drove out there and would be there 3 days a week. She was in her home. She had sold her home. Her husband had passed. They had sold the home, and she was living in a senior citizen complex. So, the house was well set up, and she had a companion, a lady that had helped her take care of her husband. So when her husband passed, then Maggie started helping with Marilyn. So I guess it was about 2013, 2014, around there, that I started, going out there to kind of help out. And she was, pretty clear and everything. And I started noticing some cognitive issues
Mhm.
around 2015, just as I had gotten, into grad school to get my degree in gerontology, and I decided to do that to get more information on how to care for her properly. And I started having problems with my arthritis in my hands, so I realized I needed to start transitioning from doing carpentry and home repairs and things like that to something that wasn't as strenuous for my hands. So when Marilyn, she too fell out of bed one night and was hospitalized for about 6 days. And frankly, she says, "I'll just quit eating and just die." you know. And but she had taken good care of herself over the years, so I knew she was in pretty good health. And so I said, and I had started talking to her a few months earlier about assisted living. So
Mhm.
she actually had found a place that she wanted to live in. And I thought, great, you know, she'll be there, they'll take care of her, I can just monitor everything. And so I got to tell you, it's been 5 years, and Maryland's been in 10 facilities.
Yeah.
All of them were so-called five-star facilities. And so I've gotten so that I tell people 5 stars is their core, it's not the care.
Mhm.
Um, I again had a little bit of experience because my parents were in assisted living back in Chicago. So I recognize that, you know, the city or the region of the country where someone is caregiving makes a difference as well. There seemed to be more support back east and in the South, in Texas, where my grandparents were, uh, than I found here in California. So I really appreciated, you know, the caregiver support group. I learned about them along the way, even before I went to USC for my master's. But I'll eventually move Marilyn into my house, and I've taken the names of some of the good caregivers at the facilities where she's been, because they can definitely make more money privately than they can at the facilities. And so that's the plan right now. But cognitively, little by little, you know, she's going down little by little, but
Yeah. Yeah.
physically, she's still pretty good shape.
Got it. Bill, had you looked into any other options with assisted living? Did you have experience with that? And how was that decision made to just take on the role as a caregiver as opposed to any other options?
Right. Excellent question. You know what? There's two different dynamics to it for me. Like I said, I had my uncle slash godfather that I had to go ahead and make preparations for. And then I also had my mother. Now, with my uncle, I really thought his kids would step up and do the right thing. And I was caught totally off guard. I remember I was entering a contract with Gilead to possibly go ahead and bring a hepatitis C project to Kenya. And I was elated by it. But I just moved my uncle in September 2014 into a skilled nursing facility because I knew I couldn't manage it by myself, but it would be the most loving thing that I can do for him. So that way he can have the care he needed, but I can actually spend that time, take him to his appointments to the VA and also to St. Jude's. But I had to bring him closer to me in Fullerton. So with that, I was an island on my own. So that was very challenging. Then the second dynamic with my mother, I was very blessed. It was crystal clear what she wanted to do. She wanted to die in her home, and she had made it crystal clear to all 7 children. So with that one, in that particular situation, being the youngest of 7 siblings, everybody kind of chipped in, which made it more manageable. And she was able to die in her own home. And the most bizarre thing, I shouldn't say bizarre, but the most interesting thing, they both died on the same day. I lost both of them on September 29th. My mom went home to be with God at 5:11 in the morning, and my uncle died on September 29th, also on the same day at 5:30. So getting two bodies out of a home. My mom, we could have kept her there as long as possible, but I still had to get her body out as my sisters couldn't handle it. So being the youngest male and the only male that was in Southern California at the time, I had to step up and do that. And then I get a phone call later from the skilled nursing facility where my uncle had been, and they gave me the call. And at that point with skilled nursing, I had to get his body out within 4 hours. So it was a difficult day, but I'm grateful that there was God, and then my family church members stepped up and gave me the support and guidance. And that's why I always wear this button: God is good all the time. Because without God, as my uncle and mother taught me, you can do nothing. And I certainly learned that in my journey to caregiving.
Okay, thank you for that, Sean. And I know you touched upon your situation as well. Um, you mentioned that they did have the long-term care insurance. Um, did it assist you? Did it help? Or was the decision just kind of made, hey, we can't afford this and let's bring you in as the caregiver?
Interesting you mentioned that because initially I was going to pay for it, at least for the first month. However, there was resistance of the family resistance, and I couldn't afford it past then by myself. Um, and it's funny how you say 5 stars, and I wouldn't buy that, but I guess it all comes down to the care. Um, the thing that really bugged me was getting all the calls from all the homes. I mean, they just bombarded me for about 2 weeks. So I told the lady, the agency, I decided on one. If we're going to do it at all, we're going to do it that one. And the call stopped. Uh, so unfortunately, we didn't go that route. But what comes of that is your life is just changed, whether you like it or not. Um, it's been it's been hard.
Yeah. It
Very,
takes
very
on a
difficult.
whole new dynamic
Yes.
from your day-to-day routine. Like I said, I was lucky enough to have people around, but your routine, everything that you experience becomes kind of revolving around the person that you're caring for and how you're doing it. Ishan, is interesting. And my next question to you guys, you touched upon the situation upon families. And I think that we all know that the dynamics of families can be supportive on one side of it, but it can also be very difficult. And if you are dealing with a situation, everybody does not always have the same opinions on taking care of an individual. Um, like Leon, I know that Marilyn, is that her name? Is not necessarily
Yes,
in your
Maryland. Yeah.
Marilyn is your family, but you have that relationship with her where she pretty much is your family. So
Yes, that's true.
outside of family that she has had, whether it's daughters or sons or uncles or brothers and sisters, have you guys experienced conflict with others interfering in, what you are doing on an everyday basis as the primary caregiver? How has that dynamic been working with outside family and friends? Bill, you can start.
Oh, sure, Gary. My dynamics are quite interesting. Again, I have to separate into two different categories with my uncle. As my support group told me in 2014 when I moved into Fullerton, they said, actually, you're somewhat blessed because the emotional and financial support when his kids decided not to participate in the long-term care of my uncle, it was easy because I could make decisions quickly. I didn't have to go back to 7 siblings like I had to do with my mother. So it's pretty straightforward in terms of making quick decisions. And I didn't quite get that initially, but through my support group, I realized that was a benefit for me because decisions have to be made and they're not always easy decisions. But, with my uncle not having any assets, you'll find family members, financial assets. I mean, literally, his children did not want to get involved. I'm sure a lot of cases you'll learn if there's assets and when money's involved, family members will come out of the dark and want to participate. But that didn't happen with my uncle's situation. So my support group was a blessing to me at Fullerton Gardens. That's where he was staying and it was a memory Alzheimer's care facility. So they were a blessing. With my mother, that's, like I said, a different dynamic altogether. That became difficult because you have 7 different opinions. And I'll never forget Mother's Day about 4 years ago when my mother wanted to have her daughters by and cook for us. And she was very independent and she wanted to stay at home by herself. And when she cooked, she had put potatoes in the microwave for over an hour. And then I came by and it was a mess in the kitchen. The microwave literally imploded and the microwave was no longer any good. And that's when I had to have that hard conversations with my sisters and brother that she cannot live alone. We are going to have to make a decision as a family to come together. But my mother was so independent. She didn't want to live with any of her children. She made it very clear she was not going to do that. She wanted to be in her home. So again, how do you make those accommodations when you got 7 different children working in different parts of the United States? That was a huge challenge. And those dynamics created a lot of friction. But when my mother always constantly reminded us, I want you all to draw closer together. So I'm grateful for her spirituality because that did make us work closer together and draw closer to God. Because without God at the center of that, we probably would have killed each other. So it created a sense of calm and peace in that atmosphere. When you're dealing with different dynamics, especially, you're trying to figure out who's going to step up next because you're burned out. You are mentally and physically exhausted on this journey. And people would always tell me, Bill, you got to take care of yourself. And I would laugh. And I'm sure Sean and Leon, you guys, and even you, Gary, you'd laugh at it because it's like, how do you find time to take care of yourself? And many times my mother and uncle would tell me, Bill, you got to take care of your back. So that's why I finally did it after passing 7 months. I mean, where do you find 90 days to cut out of your life to go and take care of yourself? So I just had to deal with the pain, suck it up, take acupuncture, take epidurals, do what I can to manage through that pain, which was bad. It was really tough at times. But at the same time, they both felt that they were burdened. I said, no, the only time either one of you are burdened is when you don't allow us to help you, because you're going to need help. But the love that we have for you and that I have for both of them, I'm going to push through it because I owe that to you. You guys have given me so much. And I think that my siblings came to the same agreement as mom was so good on that other side of the equation that we had to step up and make it work. So those dynamics were tough with the siblings on my mother's side, but my uncle was pretty straightforward. When his kid 7 years ago said, we'll get back to you, and I never heard from him. So again, my support group said, you are somewhat blessed because you can make decisions quickly and you don't have those challenging dynamics with family members.
Well, Jan, what about you? Did you have any interesting kind of dynamics with family and friends dealing with you as the caregiver?
Um, you did say Leon?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Marilyn uh, had two children. Her daughter had passed years ago, and she has a son who is not able to take care of her. And although I recognize that, he resents how close his mother and I are, he always thanks me for taking care of her. Again, fortunately, I had met him many years prior to she asking me to take care of her. So I haven't had that issue. Um, uh, I'll say this: I definitely know that I'm fortunate that I don't have a lot of pushback and obstacles that a lot of caregivers have. When my parents uh, started needing care, it actually started with my grandmother many years back in the 80s. I live in Los Angeles. My parents and my sisters lived in Chicago and in suburbs of Chicago. So I'm the oldest, and I'd go back to visit. And when I started seeing that my grandmother needed help, again, I was able to get my sisters and my aunt and my mother to we all rallied around. And being a public administration, um, uh, graduate back then, I was all into organizing. So I was able to put together a plan for rotating, visiting my grandmother. I took her around to find a nursing home for her, and she needed dialysis. So I was able to find a place that was located, pretty centrally located, so that my sisters and my mother could visit my grandmother. And from being able to coordinate that, and I had to do it quickly because I understood I could only be there for maybe 2 weeks. So I was able to coordinate that and check in with them. That gave me my initial experience. Then when it came to my grandparents, again, we all worked together. Even though they were in Chicago, I was in California, and my grandparents were in Texas. We were able to coordinate our trips and all that kind of good stuff so that no one had a lot of heavy lifting on their own. I think that uh, coordinating the care is definitely the most important thing. And one of the things that's so valuable about the LACRC is helping folks with some support and seeing how to do the asking for help, getting respite care for an individual when they need to take some time off, and pulling together. Um, One of the things that I always tell people is that age is a common denominator, and it doesn't make any difference how much money someone has or their gender or a lot of that, because when someone needs care, they need care. And
Yeah.
if
We're all going to need
I
it one day.
consider being yeah, and I consider being a caregiver a blessing. It's definitely a character building
It
and
definitely is.
patience building. You
Yeah.
know,
When you can affect someone else's life, especially someone that, provided for you, it's very fulfilling to know that it comes full circle. Sean, did you have anything that you would like to add dealing with the dynamics of family?
Yeah, in my case, it's rather unfortunate. It's pretty much non-existent.
Mm. Hmm.
And that's not from the standpoint of not caring. It's just that people have lives, and they don't see it as a priority. I guess that's the easiest way I could put it.
Yeah.
And there's been some consternation about it, and I've had some real arguments over it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just I just see it differently,
Yeah.
and than the rest, that's friends and family. Because so this morning was a good example. I mean, she got up at 3 and was wandering around. I'm a light sleeper, always have been, and I was like, Mom, what are you doing? Well, I'm just going to the kitchen at 3 o'clock in the morning. And this is after I gave her, and it's just, you got to be prepared for that. But
Mm-hmm.
I really think one person can't do it all. And when that one person does it all, something else has got to give. And for me, it's been my personal life. It's just
Yeah.
almost non-existent.
It's
Between
amazing
you,
to see,
yeah,
those reactions to people. And, I guess a lot of times people have their best interest. But unless you're there every day and you're seeing
yeah,
the
yep,
progression, you're seeing all the actions in and out, it's hard to be on the outside looking in and to make judgments on what you should or should not be doing.
yeah,
Sean, to your point, my brother and I, we're very different. He's older than me, and we're just different people. He isn't stays up at night. I'm up in the morning. He does this. I do that. But when my mother and my father also, the common denominator was their health and their well-being, and we could come together on that and meet at a common ground onto how we would move forward. And it did bring us a lot closer when she was going through her situation. I want to move forward to kind of talk about where we are today. I know we've all experienced this last year and a half or so with, the pandemic and COVID. How do you see that affecting your community? How is it presented? What challenges did you experience? Did you receive adequate care? Did you receive support? Looking at our, community, I know we're talking about being Black men as caregivers, but in our immediate community, did you find that the pandemic affected how you performed as a caregiver? Did your client get the necessary care that they should have received? Just where do you see the pandemic and COVID playing a role as your caregiver role? Sean, we can start with you.
um, it's been quite stressful. Um, when we have visitors, they have to go on the outside of the house and they go on the deck. Everyone's masked, it's sanitized. And I don't know about anybody else on this panel, but I'm quite exhausted by the whole uh, rigmarole, rules and regulations. Oh, you can't wear a mask. Oh, yeah, you got to be masked. Oh, you can't do this. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, having been an EMT for about 15 years before I retired because of the back injury, same injury that retired me from the department, from the police department, and having come from a medical family, I just find it astonishing that this country we were just not prepared. And I am really upset the way it was politicized.
Mm-hmm.
It just was not, it, every turn it was almost handled irresponsibly.
Yeah.
And it cost people lives, whatever political side you might be in. That's the long and the short of it. it just, I think it got to be really just psychologically emotional um, pandemic. And God knows what we did to children. I mean, we'll find out in 10 years. But I just, um, I see it as very, very a situation that was completely mishandled. Now, granted, it's the first pandemic in 100 years, but
Mhm.
I personally feel that this was, a long story short, I feel that this was intentional.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot of, views on it. And we all know within our, community, just, being black men and being in the black community, that things are not always equal per se. We don't always don't receive the same type of care and the same type of treatment. Bill, in the last year, what was your experience of dealing with caregiving and the pandemic at the same time?
Gary, as Leon said, honestly, there's a few different things. Honestly, it did test my patience, but most importantly, it gave me a stronger faith. And when the pandemic broke out, I remember sharing with church members on our prayer line. I said, I see this whole thing as an opportunity. Before that was early March when the state shut down, and I really do still to this very day. I said it's really an opportunity, and the reason why I say that, if you don't find God through all this as a caregiver and through what we went through, you're never going to find God. And back to the basics, what my mother and uncle always told me, you can never do anything without God. So my faith, again, that's what drove me. When I had to make difficult decisions, to give you an example, not only did that uncle had Alzheimer's and skilled nursing, he had a disease called aplastic anemia. So he had to frequently go through blood transfusions. Again, they were on lockdown in the middle of March, where I didn't have access to him other than going through the window and speaking to him through the window of the skilled nursing facility. The blessing is that he had a bed next to that window so somebody could put him on the phone and we could talk. The hard part of
Mhm.
that was when he would say, Bill, get in here, quit playing around. And I would have to show him the mask I'm wearing. And I would say, Uncle Charles, you are safer in there than you are out here. And he would say, no, come on in here now. You need to come in here now. And I said, Uncle Charles, and then I would have to share with him how his pastor, Pastor Raw Reese at Calvary Chapel, even got this disease. I said, it's very dangerous out here. And I said, you just got to trust me on this. But when we had those opportunities, when he needed to go to transfusions at St. Jude's Hospital, we were able to bond for those 4 or 5 days when he was in the hospital. So again, that was an opportunity to draw us closer together. But most importantly, spend that time with him so he would have that comfort of knowing that I'm still by his side. Now, when it came to my mother, it's the same thing. You got the Alzheimer's, but she has severe neuropathy, making those critical decisions. Do you want to see them suffer in pain, or do you take them to the hospital? And everyone's telling you, no, do not take them to the hospital. That's the riskiest place for them to be. And then you just got to trust God, pray about it, cry about it, and draw on your faith. And with my mother, I just took her to the hospital when she had those falls. I couldn't see her suffer like that with the neuropathy. Finding creative ways to work with Memorial in Long Beach in terms of the neuropathy, I mean, not the neuropathy clinic, the lymphoma clinic, that can comfort
Mhm.
her as other measures through acupuncture, things of that nature, stopped working for her. But I didn't want to see her suffer. I mean, these are two people I love so much. So being creative, being bold, but most importantly, just drawing on your faith and saying, God, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm gonna turn it over to you. And
Yeah.
like I said, it was an opportunity because it certainly brought me closer to God. Because again, I humbly tell all y'all, I had no idea what I was doing. It was faith and trust.
Yeah. Definitely. Leon, um, 2020, on
Yeah,
top of being a
yeah,
caregiver, how did it play a role in your
yeah.
life?
Well, first of all, I echo what Sean and Bill have said, and underscore in bold. What they expressed it all very well. For us, Maryland was in a facility, and of course they locked down. And I thought, great, she'll be safe. But I had gotten, I had developed some relationships with some of the employees, and so I, got phone calls and information like what was going on. And she was in one facility where they told the workers, if you feel good, come to work, but they didn't do any testing.
Mhm.
And I found another facility. So in September of 2020, I moved Maryland during the pandemic to a new facility, but I moved her to a place where they had in-house testing. And even though she was there, when I started questioning their schedule for testing and found that they were just doing random testing, I wrote a very strongly worded email to all the powers that be at the facility, the executive director on up, and said, look, I know a little bit about viruses, and you can have people who are asymptomatic and are going to test positive. And I said, you guys need to test everyone all at once, not randomly. And sure enough, they tested all 30 of the employees and found that 3 of them tested positive who are asymptomatic. So that helped them, get a little bit more serious about how they were going to handle it. I also had contacted the county and the state of California to find out like what were the quote rules and regulations around all of this. And I was told there's no rules and regulations, there's suggestions. So it was up
Mhm.
to the facilities to do and manage it as they want to. And so that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to start preparing my house to bring her here ultimately, because I also recognize that this virus is not over. I mean, first of all, once a virus is out
Yeah.
there, it's out there forever. And so now we're looking at the variations that can be coming down. So,
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good idea for folks to start preparing for support and all of that. Sean, I really, encourage you, and I'll be contacting you myself to get some support going forward, because I had moments over the years where I tried to take care of my grandmother or one of my relatives on my own and not bother my sisters, and that's when I learned that yeah, one person can't do it by themselves. So I applaud
Yeah.
what you're doing, but there is help, brother. Like I say, I will be contacting you personally, because at least with my situation, I do have support set
Yeah.
up, and
And that's kind of what
maybe I
we're
can
here
help you
for,
get something.
to provide
Yep.
support and to, give care and advice. I don't think there's really one method to this. It's,
No.
everybody is different, everybody has a different story, but at least we can take advantage of whatever opportunities that are being presented to us. As we start to come to our close, I would like to ask one final question of you, gentlemen. Um, once again, the focus of this was being a male caregiver and specifically being a Black male caregiver, and thinking about our communities, thinking about our families, thinking about everything at large and how we are affected. What advice would you give to someone who is just entering into that situation? Um, how do you adequately prepare? Can you adequately prepare for it? Um, my mother had a male nurse, and we would talk. He lived over in the jungles, and he's getting on and off of the bus every day in his scrubs. And of course, he was looked upon to be, oh, you're a nurse. Oh, what are you doing? But he was doing his job. He was doing what he was called to do. Um, and our community, we kind of can shun certain professions and looking down on people. And why are you doing that? And you should be doing this. And so on and so forth. But as people who have experienced it, what would you tell someone? I'm a young Black male. I have a family member. I need some support. How can I do this? What advice can you give them? Leon, let's start with you.
I'd say that the number one thing is I've got a number of different things I tell folks. First of all, I tell folks when they get their AARP card to start planning for the next 30, 40 years, taking care of themselves, telling their children uh, pertinent information about their own health and what resources are available. Um, I think someone that is a single child, that's the only person to help a parent or loved one. Um, to rely on your friends to start talking with friends about developing a support group. Statistically, everybody's going to be living longer going forward. So the fact is, just about all the baby boomers are going to live longer than their parents. And so I think it's important for folks to pull together. I always point to the show The Golden Girls, the way they all came together to help each other. And although that was considered a comedy, sitcom, it was a very serious idea that I recognized because back then when the show was on, I was dealing with my grandparents getting older and being able to look at their their neighbors to help, and my sisters and my mother flying down to Texas and me flying there and all the rest of that. So I think the number one thing that we as a community can do is to have that discussion with each other about our status with our parents. One of the things that I found very often is that there's some adult children who didn't have a very good relationship with their parent, and then they find out that now they have to take care of them, and they step up, they do it, they swallow their pride, they forget about whatever bad feelings or whatever, and they do it. So I think as Bill was saying, there's some blessings and opportunities to a lot of this that I think we as a people can come together. I think that we'll find that a lot of our friends are more of a support than we thought, you know. And so even though you can find that family members many times are not supportive or jump in there, that you have friends that will, or even strangers, people you meet, that'll
Definitely.
jump in.
Take
I'm
advantage of
hopeful. I think that going forward, that it's all going to be all right, even in the midst of the pandemic. But you got to be willing to accept help. You got to be willing to know when you need help and ask for it. And if you find that you're thinking about these things and you don't know what to do, start educating yourself. To me, I tell people one of our greatest blessings is Google, being able to
it. Yeah,
pick up your
yeah,
phone
definitely.
and ask a question.
Yeah.
So
Sean, what's your advice for another up and coming Black male caregiver?
I would tell you the truth, Gary. I would say if get help, take FMLA, take a family leave act, uh, siblings, or psychological help, because that's really helped me, and just go with it, and be extremely flexible. You're not gonna is you're gonna have to put your life on hold, but it's all good because you're caring for someone in your family or a parent. I would say that you're going to need a lot of help, and you know, I I didn't nearly read the Bible, but I read half of it, and being a Roman Catholic, it really helped. Even though going to mass was horrendous because it was outside in the playground,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just it was just terrible. We can go back and
yeah,
it was just awful, awful. But the Bible, and I've been really close with Bible study now and reading the Bible, and things have gone that way. And every time I feel stressed or whatever, I go to that or call somebody. And you got to be able to ask for help,
Yes.
and you got to be
Ask
able
and be
to.
able to receive it.
Exactly. You got to be also, hey, tell your siblings if you're fortunate enough to have them, or somebody else. Hey, take it. Can you take a family medical leave back? I can't do this all by myself. You really can't. You'll go.
Yes.
You'll go. You'll go. Bird crazy. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we don't need. You're there to help. You don't need to
yeah.
become the patient yourself. Bill,
Yeah.
any last words that you would like to express to any up and coming caregivers?
Sure, Gary. First, before I even answer that question, Sean, Gary, and Leon, I just want you guys to know I'm here for you. I'll pray for you. Please don't do this alone. I mean, I'm serious. As Black men, especially, I know I made the mistake initially with my uncle. You know what? One, yeah, you have the right to be angry. Yes, you have the right to be in denial. I get that. And I work with the Alzheimer's Association. When they see me to send me to speak in Sacramento for the Advocacy Day or up to Washington, D.C., for their Alzheimer's Impact program, I just speak from my heart and I just tell them, to be honest with you, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm open to learning everything I can possible. So be receptive to help. I mean, like my uncle, I said I was an island by myself, but through my support group, please get involved with one. The support group basically told me, Bill, seek out resources. So even though my uncle wasn't able to be an active member of his church at Calvary, I was able to ask somebody and even take him to fellowship there. That helped. Little things like that, just to give myself
Hmm.
a spell or a break. With my mother, taking her to plays, even though she wasn't able to follow it all the way through, going to the Pasadena Playhouse and meeting them in the new world that they were in. And that's what I learned in my journey with both of them is come to acceptance. And that's why I tell people the best thing you can do for yourself and your loved one, they're in a different world. So now you have a choice. You either meet them in their new world or you don't, and both of you end up frustrated because the train is going to move forward with or without you. So that acceptance, like both Leon and Gary said, accept help from anybody, and that's what I did. God sends angels. I truly seen it firsthand, and as my pastor always tells us in church, he always says, if God brings you to it, he'll see you through it. And God knows angels came from nowhere. And I learned through this journey how God used even my mother and my uncle by knowing the word of God. And when I would get frustrated thinking it was only a few years that they would actually have to deal with this disease, then I would see how they would minister to people. And even like my uncle, to give an example, with Alzheimer's, he would be told, Charles, why do you read that same scripture over and over? And he said, each time God reveals something differently to you. And that's when I would just say, okay, Lord, you got a plan. I'm just going to step out of your way. Because if you go by the world's wisdom and the world's thoughts, honestly speaking, I should be divorced, I should be bankrupt, and I should be dead with the stresses and the various different components. God never forsake me, as it says in the scripture. He'll never leave you nor forsake you. I never ended up bankrupt, never even came close to it. Came close to divorce a couple of times. My wife was like, have you lost your mind? But by God's grace, we got 24 years of skin in the game, and God has saw it through us. And I'm still living, man, boldly
Yeah.
by the grace of God, man. So, brother, please, please, I'm here for you. Leon said
Hmm.
he'll reach out to you. Please, after this is over with, let's definitely connect. Gary, I am thankful for this panel because we don't talk about it and holding that
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah.
Man, it's the most
Yeah.
dangerous thing because that stress will break you down. So my advice to
Yeah.
others is please seek help. Don't try to go alone. There are people that'll help you. There are angels. People are watching what you do, and people want to help. And there are resources out there, whether it's the VA, like I utilized for my mom and uncle, the Alzheimer's Association, which I didn't want to get involved to, but a librarian encouraged me to get involved. And I was like, I don't want to do that. But I'm grateful I did because that helped me in the journey. When my uncle needed new dentures, because he had lost weight, he had gained weight. The dentures fluctuate and they can't eat. And then Uncle Charles, I had to say basically, hey, where do I take you? He didn't know. So somebody told me at the Alzheimer's Association, go to the Council of Aging. And they were able to give me guidance in terms of a dentist that can actually help somebody with Alzheimer's. So there's countless resources, but Google, as you all said, is a great resource, but that human to human contact and being involved in support groups, I'll tell anybody to do that and try to get to acceptance as quick as possible.
Bill, you actually brought up a good memory. You made me smile when you just talked about the Playhouse, the Pasadena Playhouse. One of my last or a couple of memories. My mother had gotten to the point, and I took her to the LA County Fair to see the Isley Brothers and the OJs. And she was one of those women who grew up in love with Eddie Levert. And for the final days, she always remembered that concert. And the few months before she passed, took her to the Amazon to see the Temptations play that they did on their life. And
Yeah.
I mean, that was it for her. You grew
Yeah.
up with that, so just to bring those memories
Yeah.
and bring those activities, and it also helps you as well. I was making a few notes on my own thing while you guys were talking, but long-term care insurance, look into it. It's there. Figure it out. If it'll benefit you. When I saw my situations, I signed up for it myself because one day, I'll be that person. God willing.
Mhm.
Living trust. If you have property, you have different financial situations, get these things in writing while you still can before other people on the outside come in to try to take advantage of you. And all the other facilities, um, like what we're doing with the Family Caregiver Support Center, make the calls, go in, and take advantage of it. You don't have to do it alone. And just to reiterate the point that you guys all made, everybody's here to support you. You don't have to do it alone. So right now, we want to go ahead. We want to wrap it up. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming in today and talking about this. This is a dialogue that we don't always necessarily talk about in our community. We know that it's there, but it's not one of those widely spoken conversations. So now that we've opened this up, hopefully we can help and inspire the next person who will be, in our position. So want to thank you guys, Leon, Sean, and Bill, for being a part of this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you,
So
Gary.
right now,
Yeah,
this is
thank
going
you.
to thank you. This is going to conclude our panel on being a Black African American family caregiver experience panel. This is brought to you today by the USC Family Caregiver Support Center. We are here to help, educate, connect you with resources, and to support you throughout your caregiving journey. Please be sure to visit us at FCSC, that is Family Caregiver Support Center, fcsc.usc.edu, or visit our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn more and connect with our center. This panel will be available on our YouTube channel if you or someone you know wants to watch it on their own. Thank you for joining us today, and we want to wish you guys all well. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you all.
Thank you, Gary, for that informative and important panel. I also want to take a moment to thank our caregiver panelists and their willingness to share their thoughts in such an honest manner. Your courage to share with both your struggles and triumphs helps those of us watching to not feel so alone in our own caregiving journeys. You are an inspiration to us. Next, we are joined by Elena Tillman, a formerly family caregiver and lifelong supporter of the USC Family Caregiver Support Center. She is here today as a community expert in the world of caregiving, helping us to understand some of the cultural specific challenges that Black African American men may face as caregivers. Elena has been a family caregiver for both her parents and her aunt for 12 years. She's very active in her community and loves connecting families to resources. She works heavily with Lisa's Care Connection, Alzheimer's LA, and the USC Family Caregiver Support Center. Elena also facilitates a peer-led family caregiver support group for the USC FCSC on the fourth Thursday of each month. Elena, thanks for joining us.
And thank you for having me.
So lovely to have you. I'm just going to dive in with the first question because it'll probably seem like the most obvious. But in the Black African American community, what differences do you see between male and female family caregivers?
Well, traditionally in our community, caregiving was handled by the females. They were the supporters, they were the breadwinners, but they weren't the caregivers. And over the last few years, that role has changed, and they are now taking on more of that nurturing kind of role that previously they didn't even do. So it's brought about a big change.
So with the emergence of the idea of male caregivers in your community, how has this changed the way family caregiving in general is viewed in your culture?
I think more families now are turning to the males in the family and seeing where they can help. And of course, we're finding a lot of families, there is only a male. There are no daughters, there's only sons. And the sons are seeing that they can have a place, that they don't have to panic, as the four gentlemen that we saw earlier, that they can do it. Now, they don't get as much support as women do because it's not been viewed that way. But I think even that viewpoint is starting to change across the board in the community. And now there are supports for the men.
That's fantastic. And where are some of the places that these men can find support?
Well, Lisa's Connection, Alzheimer's Los Angeles, the Family Caregiver Support Center from USC are three of the main ones. There are many others, and I think one of the gentlemen referred to it. Call the Department of Aging. Reach out to the senior centers. Of course, with COVID, the senior centers are not open. However, in most cases, the case manager or social worker is still working at the senior center, and you can call them and ask for resources and referrals.
Absolutely. And as one of them mentioned too, that some of the centers where their loved ones were also offer support groups. So
Yes.
that's always a good place to check. So how is faith an important aspect of the caregiving journey in your community?
Well, as several of the gentlemen mentioned, they rely on their faith. Faith, the church has been an integral part of the Black and African American community going back to slavery time. And coming out of slavery, the church was really very important. Again, now a lot of the churches are not here anymore. A lot of them are closed because of COVID. But you know what? We all are reminded of that faith that we was ingrained in us as children, and reaching out and reaching back. There are still churches where the pastors may be available by phone. So again, there's that faith base there that is available. And one of the things we have to do as members of the community, both male and female, you have to ask. Reach out. You see people around you. You see more families with caregivers. Ask them who's helping them, how to get help.
Absolutely. Asking is strength, as you had mentioned, and our panelists had mentioned as well. And I think finding resources in the church is a great place to start because there's a community already built there, a level of trust. So
Yes.
if you're a little apprehensive about seeking a support group right away, the church would be a great place to start.
Yes.
Um, where okay, before I let you go, I know this is a big question, so just, touch on it as much as you can, but how can caregivers avoid burnout?
Well, number one, you have to think about self care. If you're not at your best, you cannot help your loved one. So, self care, going to the doctor, calling someone else and say, come help, come sit for a few minutes. I need to go pick up something. I need to go to the store. Or can you just come sit while mom sleeps and I get a nap? Because
Yes.
we, as the caregivers, have to be at our best. We have to be not just at 100%, probably 150% to be able to give the others. Um, get fun, have some fun. Again, because of COVID, you don't get out as much. Get on the computer. Find a game that you might like. Call up your friends and say, what movie is there a movie on that or something you've seen that I can maybe watch? I know one of the gentlemen mentioned Golden Girls. There's a lot of channels out there with the old TV shows that you can just sit and laugh. And a lot of times your loved ones who may not remember who you are today, they remember those old shows and they resonate with them, and they have a good time watching them. And so that's some of the way. And of course, number one, and I have to, as a leader, I have to say,
Mhm.
support groups, support groups, support groups. And there are many out there. When I was doing caregiving, I went to several of them because they each have maybe a different format. And so find one that works for you, find one that, or two, that you may go to. And what's happened now is that there are several caregivers support groups out there for the Black male. And again, Lisa's at USC, Alzheimer's LA can direct you to them. And because of Zoom, we don't have to worry about where they're located any longer. You can get on the phone, you can get on the camera and reach out. And those groups are really instrumental because they are geared for the Black male and they are run by Black men who were former caregivers or social workers, um, clergy, depending on each group. And they are just so invaluable. And I
So
just, yes, yes. So, but I
I
think
wanted
those
to
are the
ask you
best.
one more question.
Okay.
One of our panelists had mentioned respite, and for those of us not immersed in the caregiving community quite yet, can you describe what respite is and means for a
Okay.
caregiver?
Respite is a service that is provided from the different programs that where they will offer you maybe so many hours of paid caregiving, someone to come in And of course, a lot of people, especially in the Black community, are not as open about strangers coming in. So what I did in my case is that I had the person come and sit with my relatives while I was in the next room. So I didn't have that apprehension about leaving a stranger in the home, but I was still able to get that rest that I might need. And then as I got more comfortable with that person, then I could feel comfortable in leaving, maybe to go to an appointment, or and get them to spend a little more time even if I wasn't there. And unfortunately, because of COVID, there's not maybe as many programs, but again, if you don't ask, you don't know what is there.
Absolutely. Elena, is there anything else you'd like to add before we let you go? I know you've got a busy schedule.
Yeah. No, I just thank the gentlemen who were on the panel, and I thank all the men that are stepping up to help. My husband and my sons got pulled in when my family members were here. And I thank them, even though it's been years now since our loved ones have passed, that they were there to be supportive. And again, you never know who in your family or who in your community will be there for you. And that for me, but I just marvel at the men who've taken on those roles, and I just applaud you.
Yes, I agree. I agree. It is not an easy role, and as these panelists have described, it's troublesome but rewarding and very, very
Yes.
difficult. So
Yes.
thank you so much, Elena, for speaking with us. And
Oh,
if
no
anyone has
problem.
any additional questions for her, just reach out to us and we'll connect you. Thank you so much again for joining us.
And thank you for asking me.
Of course. um, so, thank you so much for everyone who's joined us today. We hope this discussion helped build your understanding about some of the unique cultural challenges Black African American males and female family caregivers can face. As a complement to this discussion panel, next Friday, November 5th, we will re-premiere a previously recorded discussion panel from August 2020 focused on Black African American female caregivers. We hope you will join us for this re-premiere on the YouTube channel next week. And even though we are focusing on a specific cultural community today, I think we can all agree that some of these experiences are universal. As I mentioned at the beginning, today's event is the last in this series. We hope these sessions have opened your eyes to different cultural experiences that family caregivers go through. Being a family caregiver can often be confusing and overwhelming, and sometimes it's what you don't know that can hurt you. That's where we come in. The USC Family Caregiver Support Center is here for caregivers. Our goal is to educate you, connect you to resources, and support you throughout your caregiving journey. Please be sure to visit us at www.fcsc.usc.edu or visit our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn more and connect with our center. Each week of these discussion series was recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel if you or someone you know would like to watch them on their own. If you came upon this video by chance and want to learn more about our center, please visit our website for more information. If you've watched all these videos in this series and you still haven't signed up for our program, what are you waiting for? All you need to do is sign up for our programs is click on the yellow CareNav tab on the right-hand side of our website. It's never too late to ask for help, and asking for help is strength. So don't be shy about getting connected to one of our experts. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like it below. Also, make sure to click on the red subscribe button to subscribe to our YouTube channel and be notified every time we post a new educational video on the caregiving community. I also want to plug our upcoming 21st Caregiver Conference live streaming on YouTube on Saturday, November 6th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Once again, we adapted our conference into a virtual format so we can all stay safe and healthy while connecting with each other. This year's theme is the courageous caregiver in you, and we will focus on how family caregivers show their courage in all things caregiving, dealing with stress, handling difficult situations, advocating for their loved ones, and much more. Most of all, we will explore how family caregivers work hard every day to find the courage to keep going. Please visit the link at the bottom of the screen to register for the conference. And before we sign off, I would like to put in a special mention for Lisa's Care Connection, which Elena mentioned. When I'm not here as a host on YouTube live streams, I'm the managing director of Lisa's Care Connection Providence, St. Joseph Hospital in Burbank, California. Our nonprofit organization helps family caregivers cope with Alzheimer's and chronic illness through tips, strategies, and support. You can learn more about Lisa's Care Connection and all of our free services by calling us or visiting our website using the link below. Take good care of yourself until next time. Just remember, the caregivers fight on. Have a great rest of your day.